So I just want to show you the bind off for the Hibisco necklace, particularly the beaded portion. So I'm going to teach you how to do the elastic lace bind off, and then I'll skip ahead to working with the beads. Keep in mind that this first section, the number of stitches you're binding off is dependent on the size you're making. I am working on the small, so I'll be binding off 34 stitches. The first thing that you do is purl 2 stitches, and then the next thing that you'll do is come into the back of those 2 stitches with the left hand needle, wrap the yarn around, and bring the yarn through, and that counts as 1 bound off stitch, so I'll now have 33 left to do. I'll purl 1. With the left hand needle, I'll go into the back of those 2 stitches, purl 1, that's 2 stitches bound off, and I'm going to continue on like that until I have 34 stitches bound off on the needle. Okay, so I've bound off all of those 34 stitches with a plain bind off, and now I'm going to get ready to work the bind off with beads. Each section of the lace stitch that's at the center of the Hibisco necklace uses 5 crystal beads. So I'm going to knit through one section with you so you can see the placement of those beads, and then I'll show you where they'll land on the next section. So pretty quickly, hopefully, you'll see what the pattern is and why it's written out the way it is. If you're not sure if you've worked the correct number of stitches, the first beaded bind off happens right over this slipped bead, which is the first bead row that you'll come to. So I've got 34 stitches bound off before. You can count by looking at the edge and saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. to make sure you have 34. But if you work the plain beaded bind off up to that bead right there, or sorry, the bind off without the bead, then you'll be ready to go with the next section of the bind off directions. So I am going to purl 1, and this is me working a lace bind off with the bead once. Purling 1, going into the back of those 2 stitches with my left hand needle, and then before wrapping the yarn around, which I was just going to do automatically, you'll go and grab a bead, and don't slide it up all the way so it's touching. Keep it out a little bit so that when you're wrapping the yarn around, you can be pulling that bead through those 2 stitches you made. So now you can see I've got a bead right here on top of the stitch on the right hand needle. I'm going to move that bead all the way to the back of the right hand needle so it's in the right place. And now I'm going to work a lace bind off without beads for 3 times. And this first one, make sure that bead is to the back. So I've got 1 right there, and now I've got 2 right there, and now I've got 3 right there. So this next stitch I'm going to work into is the second yarn over from that double yarn over. You're going to be tempted to work it through the back loop like you did the other yarn overs in this pattern, but don't. Work it through the front, and this is so the bind off can really block out when you go to block the edge of the necklace. And now this is another beaded bind off, so I'm going into it, slipping up a bead, and then you really have to massage that bead through. Sometimes it behaves better than others, but do you see how I just shoved it through right there? Don't worry, you won't break it. Just go for it. And now you're going to do another 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and now you are at the center stitch of that little lace section right in the middle there, and that one gets a bead, so we will go in to bind it off. Slip that bead up, wrap it around, and look, that just popped right off. Don't be surprised when that happens. It happens to me too. Just shove that bead through. Sorry, massage sounds much better than shove. Let's say massage. And now I am going to bind off 3 more plain. I'm working this a total of 4 times. 1, 2, 3. Now here's the 4th time. I'm going in to this stitch, knitting it, getting a bead, sliding it up, pulling it through. So you should really have, you're seeing me in all versions of getting that bead through the stitch there. Now this next stitch is the 2nd yarn over from a double yarn over. Don't work it through the back loop. Now you're doing a lace bind off plain for 3 stitches. This is the last time you're doing that. 1, 2, 3, and now you are doing another lace bind off with a bead. So keep those stitches a little loose. That's kind of the trick to be able to get the bead through. If you pull those up too tight, it's impossible to massage it through the stitches. I absolutely love this yarn. It's so soft, but it's a little slippery, which actually I think helps with this a bit. There you go, and then I'm going to get that bead to the back there. Come on, sucker. There we go. And now I'm going to do a plain beaded bind off for 2. 1, 2. And now I'm ready to start that whole repeat again. And I just want to count through with you so you can see where those beads land, those crystal beads. This is going to be a beaded bind off, and then these 3 stitches are plain. This second of the 2 of the double yarn overs gets a bead on it, and then I've got 3 right there that are plain. This center stitch gets a bead on it, and then I've got 3 right there that are plain, and then this first stitch of the double yarn over, which matches the one on the other side, gets a bead on it, and then 3 that are plain, and then 1 that has a bead, and then 2 that are plain. So you can see the stitch with the beaded bind off is the same on every repeat. So you should know if you're off pretty quickly. And I just want to flip this over and show it to you. It's not blocked, so it's not laying as beautifully as it will, but you can see just where those crystal beads lie right there on the bound off edge. If you find that it's really hard to get the bead through onto the stitch, use a double pointed needle that's 1 size larger than the needles that you used for the necklace, and that might help you make sure that your stitches are just a little bit bigger and easier to get the bead through on. So you're going to continue that stitch all the way across to the other side of the lace section. You'll be ending with the last bead right over the last slipped bead line on the other side, and then you'll work a plain purlwise lace bind off to the end. And that is how you bind off Hibisco. Enjoy!